What's up, everybody? Today we're talking about some of the missions featured in the new game mode Fireteam coming to Squad. If you watched my interview with Howitzer, then you should know some of the basics about what this new game mode is. And today we're diving deeper into 3 different missions I've already had the chance to play. But first, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, leave a like, drop a comment down below with your thoughts on Fireteam. And if you need a copy of Squad for you or a friend, be sure to click the link down in my description and use my code SLATE3K30 for 30% off the game. To give you a better picture and context, I think we should start at the very beginning, and that's how to join up with friends for a mission in Fireteam. You'll be able to join friends or random people via a server browser similar to PvP. You'll then go to a Jensen's type of area where you'll be able to select a mission. All the players will be in this area, and the party leader can go up to the mission select screen, where they can select a mission and get provided with basic information, including recommended players or play length. You can select a difficulty, which I believe only changes the amount of respawns you get. You'll also know what faction you are, the opposing faction, and some basic information about the tasks for that specific mission. Now, I've had the chance to play several different missions, some at the partner meetup and some since. Now, in my interview with Howitzer, I did show some footage from the Combined Arms mission on Mutaha. And since I've played an updated version, so I'm going to be showing some footage and breaking down that mission so you get a better idea what's going on. And because it's a Combined Arms mission, you do have an armored vehicle to utilize for the mission. But you will have to dismount infantry on occasion to help clear emplacements so that you can progress to the objectives. Now, with all these missions, once you get into game, you can select your kit before hopping into a vehicle or progressing. On your map, you will have indicators of where certain objectives are and an objective overall at the top of the screen to help guide the experience. But keep in mind that these missions still have a sandbox element that you're accustomed to in Squad. You still have to pick your route, how you want to handle things, and the kits that you're going to take along with you. Now, what's great about this mission is that there's variations of the same mission. So certain objectives will be in different places, creating a little bit more variety in terms of what you're going to be playing through. So the first thing we need to accomplish in this mission is gathering intel. We need to go to the blue circle, find the intel that will reveal locations for mortar bases. From there, we make our way to the mortar bases and destroy them. Now, it's not always as simple as getting to the objective to handle the objective. There are emplacements and things along the way, including vehicles that may be roaming around the area. And the bots aren't always just sitting there waiting on you. They will take shots at you, especially lats just hiding around corners, which make it very difficult to traverse the area, especially in like Mutaha and Fallujah in a vehicle. So while in a vehicle, you got to keep moving, but simultaneously what's interesting is if you do get held up or something like that, you will find as infantry, mortars will start to range your location more closely. Or you may hear vehicles patrolling close, or maybe a 50 opens up from a techie. It's neat because there's just enough things to pull the attention of your squad and maybe what kits you have. Unsurprisingly, the bot infantry can get aggressive and will try to push you. Now, admittedly, the bots, I think, are always going to be some form of work in progress because I think there's a lot that they can do to continue to add to the bots' sort of intelligence. Many of us have played 6 Days in Fallujah, and that's probably some of the more aggressive bots I've seen in a game. There are certain scenarios and times where sometimes you get that feeling where bots are pressing you, trying to find different routes to get to you, and causing mayhem, especially if you're staying in a group and causing a lot of noise. There's been multiple times where we've been in a position looking, let's say, south, right? And then a bot will come in from the north and sneak in behind us, disrupt us, maybe throw a grenade. They'll take out one of the squad members, and we have to react to that while still being pressed from the south. In our failed playthrough of this, we actually kept running into groups of lats that were just eating our vehicle up. We turned on the northwestern side of the city down one road, and it was like we kicked a hornet's nest. And that's frankly when this game mode plays at its absolute best. It's when you're having to worry about multiple angles of approach from enemies. It's when a vehicle is floating nearby, so your lat has to worry about that, while your combat engineer is worried about blowing up an ammo cache. And with the Mutaha mission, what we found is these narrow lanes that the infantry would have to stay within while supporting the vehicle. It does require the element of combined arms working together with your vehicle to get fire support and to help cover the vehicle because the lats are going to be coming from different angles. I realize that's not some wild concept, and a lot of you are going to be like, well, obviously you got to do that, but to have it sort of happen in the moment of Fireteam with bots is nice. You get to play within squad focused on what your squad needs to do without some of the things that may disrupt that in PvP. So there are nice moments in it where you feel the squad experience, but in a different way. That's what's interesting about it, is it's the same mechanics, but it's a different format. It's the same vehicle we see in PvP, but it's way more focused with infantry, so you get the mechanized infantry experience in this moment. Now, that doesn't mean it's not without flaws. We'll talk about more of the general picture stuff after these missions, but for Mutaha specifically, there are moments where it does pretty well. Covering some of these narrow lanes, going down alleyways, encountering contact. One thing I think is a challenge for Offworld is having such a large urban map and only having clusters of bots. Some of it is going to be about amplifying that intensity by adding more bots, more mobile vehicles, and things to constantly drive players to have to deal with something. I don't necessarily expect the whole city to feel alive, but I want enough that every time I plan a route, I might run into a slightly different challenge. Now, there are those moments. We came around a corner at one point and ATGM flew over our vehicle, one that we did not expect or had encountered yet. So I think there's things I see in this mission, other missions, that are very good foundational pieces to making a fun experience for players, especially players that have some hours that want to do something different with a group of friends. And if you are an experienced player, I would recommend dialing up the difficulty. I can elevate the intensity and the need to work together, which I think is important to make this game mode really feel like it needs to feel. And I think with the vehicle and the chances of losing it plus one life, it started to make this mission stand out on its own. Now, I think there's more feedback to give in my overall impressions later, but I want to give you a little bit more of a look at some of these missions so you have some more context. This is a Narva extraction mission featuring Ukraine. The idea is that our helicopter has crashed behind enemy lines and we need to navigate our way out. Basically, we're starting at the Narva castle and we need to get all the way to the airfield on the other side of the map to be able to exit. And along the way, we're going to encounter a regular militia that's going to try to slow us down or kill us. And the interesting thing about extraction is the bots are already moving towards you as we speak. So we can't stay in this area for very long where the helicopter crash actually is. It feels like you're running into small groups or patrols of the IMF, which are creating some fun firefights. We did this mission about 3 times before we were able to complete it, and it was a balance of trying to be somewhat stealthy, maneuvering without disturbing too many of the bots across the map, versus having to choose your firefights that you felt like you were going to make progress through. We did have some pretty dynamic firefights where we focused something east of us, a group of enemies, and then a couple would start peeking in from our west and start to apply pressure to our group. Fireteam as a game mode tends to excel at those moments where the bots seem to want to interact with you, when they do want to partake in that firefight, but they're not coming at you from just one angle. As a player, having to watch your back, having to respond to a different angle of attack makes it more interesting. I think the difficulty for Offworld is making sure that that feels like it's happening more frequently and consistently, because there are times where Narva feels kind of quiet or dead, and some of that is just the lack of detail on the map. Compared to something like Fallujah or the new Al-Basra, there's just not a ton on the roads, and there's not as much density of props and assets that make it feel as lively. So you're more dependent on the bots having certain activities to apply that pressure, to interact with you, to make things feel like a more immersive environment, especially within a map like Narva. We all want that cinematic squad moment, something that we're accustomed to, where the firefight feels right, you're getting attacked from multiple angles, and you're having to make adjustments on the fly in hopes of saving what's left of your squad. But of course, there are instances where you do recognize that you are playing bots. It's apparent, and that's something that Offworld will continue to have to work on and develop to make it feel more organic, to make it feel like the bots are really looking for ways to destroy you and the squad itself. I mean, it's likely that the IMF is the one that shot down your helicopter. They do push the castle you start in pretty quickly if you don't get moving. But I do think there needs to be more activity, more patrols, vehicles and things looking for you, actively searching as you start to progress a little bit further away from the crash site. That challenge is about finding ways of impeding player progress that feels organic, like a patrol rolling into the players, coming in from a direction that may not be the direct line to the exit. Or finding ways to force players off course, force them away from the line that they're taking to get out of the city. Now, I will say partners have been giving feedback on missions as we've been able to play them. Some of that feedback revolves around a little bit more dressing around the missions themselves, some sort of intro or something like that to get us immersed and up to speed, as well as some sort of exiting aspect to kind of get some closure out of the mission. Because while still a work in progress, this mission feels a little bit less baked than some of the other ones. The exit, the finish of this mission felt kind of anticlimactic. For example, you kind of get to a point and you've crossed into friendly lines and the mission sort of just ends. I want to give you an example of some of the feedback I provided. And for this mission specifically, I felt like the end again was a little bit anticlimactic. And I suggested that maybe instead of crossing over the river and getting closer to the airfield, we instead have the mission end in military barracks. Maybe that's the last holdout of the Ukrainian faction in the city or an area that they are defending. And once you get into that space, you initiate some sort of timer. So that's like a transport coming to pick your squad up to get you further away from the city and exit the military barrack area entirely. But the idea would be that timer would then start counting down, and in the meantime you have to defend your position as a lot of the bots and stuff like that for the IMF begin to push that space to not allow you to just leave. So ideally this would cut down on the space that you're taking up within Narva to get from point A to point B, allowing for more density of things in between the entrance and the exit of the mission. I also think having a more intense ending would result in a better payoff for doing the mission by having the clock ticking down and stressing your team one last time as a finale. Otherwise, I like the bones of the mission objective. I just think it needs more polish and more work. Now let's move on to our third mission, which also takes place on Narva, but this objective is search and destroy. We played this mission back at the partner meetup, and it was kind of like a breach mission into Narva Castle. We needed to get inside and clear enemies. So for this one, we're playing as the Russian ground forces, and we actually spawned in the apartments across the street from the castle, so we just needed to find our route and breach the castle and work our way through. Now, this is one of the paid missions, and it's meant to be a shorter mission with less checkpoints and things like that, especially compared to something like the Mutaha mission, which I think is good. We do need variety in the mission selection and the amount of time it takes. And what's nice about this mission in particular is it forced us to play more close quarters, something different from many of the other missions we had tried. So we not only had variety in the mission type, the length, we had a different experience, and we had to play differently because of the circumstances. This is one of those missions, for example, that I saw an opportunity for more of an educational experience, especially for new players, to get used to the gun mechanics and working through tight spaces based on how squad operates. Consider this to be a snippet of PvP, a small moment that you have during a random game you play on a public server, that one firefight that takes place in some sort of industrial area or whatever. And then it's translated to Fireteam, and it could be useful for new players to play and try and experience without the chaos that may come in a 50v50. Now, this is a very early look at this mission, so it's very much a work in progress. I wanted to give this perspective because, again, it's a different type of mission that forces you to play a different way, much different than the experience we had on the Mutaha mission. You'll see some of the bots appearing a little bit more static, which is something that I think Offworld is trying to address and has been able to address in certain scenarios because they found some bugs that they were able to iron out with the bots. And playing it more recently, I noticed the bots were much more active than in comparison to what I saw at the partner meetup, which is solid progress. But I think what threw me off a little bit with this mission was being able to cross the road and get to the building without any contact whatsoever. We crossed the street and basically walked back in. There was no bots looking outside of the walls. Now, while this is meant to be maybe a 15-minute mission or something along those lines, it still needs to feel satisfying to play through. So again, there's elements here that I think work pretty well in setting us up and giving us a little bit of variety. It's just continuing to amplify and elevate those experiences, really push and challenge players, because I think there's real fun opportunities when you're playing with a group of folks that you know to see how things go. And I think that's when it begins to strive. I think we all had fun and we felt pretty immersed in what was happening. I mean, just take a look at when Moy full auto TKs me through this window. I mean, at least he apologized, right? I'm just kidding. I think we all had a really good time experiencing Fireteam for the first time. So while I think this mission could be really cool and it has the bones, like I've said before, I still think it needs continued work. And that makes sense given the very early access nature of what we were able to play. But I can see the opportunity to build something that could really fly all within the sandbox of something we're familiar with, being Squad and the maps and the mechanics. I really hope this gives you more context into the missions, into what Fireteam offers, as well as some of the potential I think the game mode can have in the long run. I also think it's important to give you an idea of some of the feedback I provided or some of the partners collectively provided. Now, I know that I was talking through all of this to help provide context in the information I just mentioned. I'm going to have a separate video where I'm going to go into a mission on Fallujah and leave that one with minimal cuts and minimal voiceover during the mission itself to again give you even more context into what a whole mission looks like. And it just so happens that the Fallujah mission may have been the best Fireteam mission that we have all played. But at least now, by looking at some of the missions I've already shared, you have better context and information around what the gameplay looks like in Fireteam. While this is of course all work in progress, I think it does more and it serves the game mode better than just what's on paper in the announcement. If you watch my video that featured the interview with Howitzer, you know some of my overarching thoughts about what I think this game mode has in terms of potential. One would be educating new players. Two would be getting modders and potentially more modders involved with Squad. But in addition to that, it's obviously a content offering. It's a mission-based system that differs from what we have in PvP, giving you some amount of hours of content. So there's an opportunity there to play the game with a lot of the mechanics and things we're familiar with in Squad, but in a different mode. But this also provides an opportunity to play with your friends in an environment where the tasks are much more narrowed, excluding some of the chaos you may face in PvP. So that gives you an opportunity with your friends to play a mission, then jump into PvP, or take a break from PvP to jump into a mission. Now, of course, that's not going to meet everybody's interest, but it is an option. And Fireteam is going to be what you make it. If you want it to be more serious, if you want it to be more focused, you want to really work together, which you may need to, especially if you're playing on one life, then I think it improves the overall experience. Now, another small piece of potential here is to tie Fireteam in with some sort of reward system, something that seemed to be indicated in the FAQ. Creating some sort of interconnectivity by some of the systems being developed in Squad would be helpful. I mean, we know that the brigade system is something coming up. We don't have a lot of information on that, but maybe there's opportunities there, as well as the career screen that just got added. I think there's opportunities here to tie in some of the future updates, maybe with new factions and new maps, into something that looks like a campaign. And maybe by completing a set of missions or completing a mission, you get a weapon skin or an emote that can then be used in PvP. And we start to establish some interconnectivity and kind of promoting players to just try a mission or play a mission with friends. Now let's talk about some initial concerns and feedback. And one thing is that right now, the missions don't feel as advanced as they need to. There still needs to be more layers and things added to challenge, especially more advanced players. However, for new players, I could see this being a little bit of a gateway into what Squad is, some of the mechanics and some of the basics to understand maybe tidbits of what to expect in PvP. But what's still glaring is just a lack of education to get people up to speed before even diving into this. Now, a couple of other things would be continuing to dial up bot complexity, how they react to certain things, how they attack you, and their movements. I know these bots may never match the complexity of going against another player in PvP and how they may react to you being within an area. But I do want the bots to react. I do want the bots to push, and I want that to continue to be dialed up. So especially for advanced players, they do feel like there's a challenge there. Now, obviously, Squad has a set number of maps at varying levels of detail. Hopefully, over time, many of them will get updates to add detail, similar to what we have with the new Al-Basra, which is pretty much the flagship map that's offered in Squad. On the flip side, there are just maps that feel kind of empty. They lack some of the density that you'd even get on something like Fallujah. So I think it's now a challenge for Offworld to figure out how to populate those maps. Not only in the sense of adding emplacements or just different buildings or things, but also in the way bots are placed or positioned, as well as how they move via something like patrols. The alternative may also be to limit some of the map area that we're playing within, narrow some of the focus of not only the players, but the bots themselves. Unrelated to that, I think it's going to be helpful to understand when it's important to force players into a scenario where they have to hurry versus where they have more time. While I understand to some extent they want it to be a sandbox and they want you to plan your own adventure, more times than not, I felt myself wanting more pressure in the moment, dialing it up. And so if a clock is counting down for when we need to finish objectives, I think that applies more pressure than when a clock is counting up. It would also be cool to see missions that start off one way but end in something else. For example, the Narva mission I brought up where we played as Ukraine. Having the end of that mission turn into a situation where it becomes a defensive mission where we're positioned in an area and we have to hold that space for a certain amount of time before we can be extracted from the area. Now, the next piece of feedback I want to talk about is just tidying things up, elevating the experience around the mission itself. Now, within PvP Squad, we often have those cinematic moments where things are just going crazy, everything's happening, and the blood starts flowing a little bit, right? And in Fireteam, those moments can exist, but they don't feel quite as rewarding. And maybe that's because you're trying to complete objectives and you don't really have anything there that appropriately closes out the experience, something we're more familiar with when it comes to single player or co-op campaigns. Some sort of closing element would be helpful besides a win screen where we do definitely need a scoreboard added. Maybe it's as simple as having a small cinematic that kind of exits you out of the mission, saying the objectives are complete and something was accomplished by your group. Simultaneously, at the beginning of a Fireteam mission, I think it'd be cool to provide the squad leader with more information. Give them an opportunity to use a UAV to help plan the route. I think there's more intel and information that can be provided to help immerse players into the idea that they are doing a mission. Now, it's worth reminding everyone that the footage that you're seeing attached to this and some of my feedback is on missions that I played a month or 2 months ago, which means that the 10.1 update coming out with this content may be vastly different from what I'm encountering. There's probably improvements and adjustments made that you guys will see in 10.1 that I didn't see when recording all of this. But I think what I've played gives me a lot of hope for what the game mode can be in the long run. Now, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of folks that are going to hesitate at purchasing missions. And I can understand that. Some of you are going to be looking at PvP and wondering why that's not getting more attention. We addressed some of that in my other video, but I think what's interesting here is there's an opportunity for Squad to continue to offer an additional value to the game beyond just what's in PvP. That may not be everyone's interest, and that's also understandable. I do think what is here offers a framework for something cool down the road, and over time with continued development, I'm really excited to see where this could go for just opportunities to do something different within something that is familiar being Squad and the sandbox that it is. I do feel like I have a sense of what the community reaction may be given the condition of PvP and still needing to work on that, which Offworld has, in all fairness, addressed that they are working on things to improve that experience. But I'm sure the community response may generally be concern over the focus of Offworld, given their interesting game mode that does not affect PvP. And it's going to be hard for folks to separate this announcement from the condition of PvP, but I think, again, there's an opportunity here for Offworld to continue expanding the offering that Squad makes, giving value to the game. And finally, we do have to realize that to an extent, this is going to be a business decision to offer something additional, help people get introduced to the game, maybe make that learning curve a little bit easier for new players. Like, this does a lot more than what the tutorial can do and what Jensen's does. Now, will more advanced players find this something that they dive into? That's a bigger question for me, because I do think there's opportunities to have a lot of fun with just a couple of friends in a more focused environment, dialing up the difficulty to get some sort of experience that you may be looking for. But I can also see over time with more mechanics added and maybe additional things added to what are capable in the missions, you know, like different clocks, different timers, different objectives. I could see it being a little bit of a challenge, especially when integrated with some of the other functions that they're looking at adding, like the brigade system or the career system, for example. Could there be rewards added to players that they can take into PvP because they completed missions? And then what could this do with regards to modding? Is this going to bring some more modders on board to the game, or does this give folks an opportunity to kind of play Game Master a little bit and make some fun things for friends? But I feel that a lot of this is related to potential over the long term. And frankly, you have to start somewhere. Now, I would recommend once 10.1 releases, pick up a free mission, try it with a few friends, and if possible, give feedback. But I would remember that Offworld's intent is to continue to make updates, continue to advancing things like the bots, the objectives, and the missions overall over time. This is a new offering, which will require that time to become whatever the potential will allow it to be. And while I did enjoy playing these missions, I do understand the concerns of PvP, and those are valid. And I think Offworld right now is really trying to work to remedy the PvP situation while continuing to offer something new for players. Now, I'm going to have another video coming out soon that is going to be a little bit more of a deep dive into one specific mission to give you even more context of how that works. But of course, for now, hit the subscribe button, leave a like, drop a comment down below, and I'll see you next time.